Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Vampire Diaries, Grimm, Sleepy Hollow, as well as the season finale of Emerald City. Like always, if I'm talking about something you don't want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I have to say about this week's episode of The Vampire Diaries, you can skip to what I had to say about Grimm, Sleepy Hollow, and or Emerald City season finale. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is The Vampire Diaries. A very good episode, like a very emotional episode, and the fact is that, like, obviously last episode we found out Catherine's back. She's kind of taken over hell. Basically she's kind of working and like, I love how the entire episode is like, oh, obviously it's Catherine herself. It's like, because to me, I'm like, if they were going to set up Catherine, why would they show, like, you know, Nina Dobre's face at all or anything like that? I was like, are they just setting it up so they could just get the face reveal by the end of the episode, or you know, save it specifically for the season finale, the series finale? But then I was like, but obviously things turned out not to be that case, because it's like misdirections all around. Because at first, obviously we have Matt's mom returning to town and everything. And first I'm like, oh man, don't tell me Catherine came back and she possessed his mom's body or something, on Matt's mom's body or something like that. I was like, no, apparently Matt's mom died like 2 years ago. But the fact is that Matt cut off ties with her, that he never really checked in with her, so he never bothered to know that his mom died. So I know, is that the same actress? Because I feel like his mom looked different. I swear she never was a prominent character. She only popped up a little bit because she wasn't in Mystic's Fall when the show like began, but it's like partway through it. It was sometime after Vicky died, I think she popped up for a little while, but then Matt kicked her out because she started drinking again and was just more of a problem. But it did seem like they would possibly stayed in contact, but it was just never kept up. So she came out of hell mainly specifically for Catherine, mainly because she was like, oh, Catherine's the only one that did anything for me. I guess in a sense, it's like when no one cared about her, no one in town, everyone in town really looked down upon her. Or, oh, she's that drunk. Oh, her husband, like, she's the lady that's raising 2 children, her husband left her type of situation. She's kind of a nobody. Then the fact is that matter, it's even the person that she would hope would care about her own son didn't even notice she had died. For 2 years, didn't know she was dead. So he was not there for her. He didn't give her a second chance, which, to be fair, Matt gave you a second chance and you blew it. But he didn't give you other chances like he's kind of give everyone else around him a second chance. So, but more so than anything, it's like everyone else. It's like, I didn't want to, Catherine gave her the opportunity to not burn and suffer in hell. That's kind of what her main reason. But that, obviously that's getting to that, but I kind of want to trail back. I love the fact that Damon brought up one of the points I brought up last episode. It's like literally everything that literally happened in this series, you can draw back to Catherine. It's all started because of her. Stefan and Damon started because of her. Ties to the originals. They start listening to Silas. The Travelers, just like everything bad that's ever happened across the show. It's like in some shape or form, it's all tied back to Catherine. And I brought that up last episode, just like she was the catalyst that set everything in motion. Some things directly, other things indirectly. I mean, but even with the indirect things, she created the things to directly lead to them. So it's not even like a far indirectness. It's like a slightly adjacent indirectness is how I should kind of put it. I even love the fact is that he's making, like, you have a point where Damon is messing for Skull, making, like, sounds like, It's like, I mean, granted, she's the woman that toyed with your hearts and manipulated you and just messed with your lives for so long. Especially because, you know, for Damon, it's sucked because, like, both him and Stefan were in love with her at one point. It is like they wasted so much time with her. Like I said, that's literally how the series began, was him trying to get her back. You know, Damon in particular. And I was like, what was that all worth? Nothing, because all it did was lead you to an endless line of headaches. But it also brought up the whole situation about Bonnie and Stefan. Obviously, the whole thing is, hey, we'll push your wedding forward, because obviously what's going to piss Catherine off the most is the fact is that we have Stefan being happy, and is obviously going to piss Catherine off because she's always been obsessed with Stefan. Because Stefan's the one she's always been mainly in love with, but she's always used Damon and made him believe, like, oh, he was that special someone, but it was never that case. She's always been in love with Stefan, and she even used that on Stefan sometimes. Like, oh no, Stefan, you're the one I've always been in love with. It's never been Damon, you know, always causing problems. But nevertheless, it's a situation where Bonnie's like, I don't know if I can come to your wedding. Like, it's a good moment for you and everything, and I understand that, but it's like, I get the whole Stefan situation, but I can't look at him. I can't necessarily forgive him. And Stefan understands it, and even Caroline gets it because it's like he stole that. Because their situation is just a reminder of what she won't have. The fact is, what they're having is something she can never have with Enzo. It's literally the flip side of their love story. I mean, granted, she was going to eventually give him the cure, but it's a situation where like one of the partners is a vampire and the other one is a human. So it's just like literally a mirror image of them, so you know it's got to sting, especially because the man that killed him, the man you love, is right in front of you. So it makes it even harder. Like, she's always been cool with Stefan, but it's just like this time it was a little too much now. And it's like, both Enzo as well as even Damon says it to Stefan, and Enzo says it to Bonnie. Like, that's not who you are anymore. That Ripper that killed Enzo is not Stefan. This is the real Stefan here. That part of him is gone forever and is never coming back now that he's human. And Bonnie, Enzo's trying to tell her, like, the fact is, you can't, because it's so interesting because I think it's because Bonnie is it's kind of part of her nature. She's very empathetic. She's very sympathetic, but also very empathetic, and it's like probably one of her best qualities is she sees the best in people, and she's always there for the people that are important to her. And he basically doesn't want her to miss out on this one moment for Caroline that could mean the world to her, especially because Caroline lives a long time, and it's like if she ever gets together with someone else again, who's to say necessarily that Bonnie will be alive then, being a human lifespan and everything. And it's like here she's in this moment with someone that she loves, someone that Bonnie has a connection to as well. So it's like, don't miss out on this opportunity because you have your problems with Stefan about me. Because the fact is that, trust in the fact is that Caroline loves him and sees him for who he really is. If you want to go to the wedding, don't do it necessarily for Stefan, but do it because Caroline trusts and loves him wholeheartedly. Go for that particular reason. Because it's like, just because they're having their happy moment, it won't take away from ours. That the fact is that I love you and that will never change. And basically kind of talking about their wedding. Which to me, I see the beauty behind it, but at the same time, it's like, to me, that would just make me sink deeper. Just be reminded, like, oh, this is what you would want for our wedding, but it's like, we would never have that. Especially because it's like, the only way she can talk to him is by going to that other world that she created, her own. Well, yeah, I just refer to it as world. I won't refer to it as hell because, it's not really flames and stuff, but her own little pocket dimension she created for him. So then you have just like, it's so many beautiful moments. Like, obviously you have Damon drinking with his bro, just celebrating and everything. And you also have him off of Caroline. It's like your future sister-in-law. And then they had that little beautiful toast about Sheriff Forbes and everything. And the fact is that he's like, and she raised a beautiful daughter who's now going to be part of the family. And he's like, I know you're worried because the fact is Bonnie and Elena aren't going to be there. But he's like, he gives her the necklace. And it's like, yeah, this way Elena is with you on your wedding day. He's like, I will want it back. And just like, it's such a beautiful moment. Like it's such a situation where it's like taking Bonnie, Caroline, and Damon. They've always had their problems. Like, obviously, Caroline's always looked down upon Damon because she's always preferred Stefan just because he was like, oh, he's a more redeeming quality brother. But it's like, over all this time, they've all gotten closer to become friends. It's even something interesting that Alaric said. I really quickly bring it up. Like, the fact is you see him a little kind of choked up and kind of like a little sad look on his face and everything. To me, I looked at that. I was like, oh, it could hit him for two different reasons. One, because he never actually got his wedding on two occasions. One, between him and Joe, that was interrupted. He almost lost his girls, but luckily he was able to keep them. But it's probably a reminder of that. Plus the fact is that he was in love with Caroline at one point too, so it's got to be hard to see. Like, even though it seems like that was kind of resolved last season, like her and Stefan getting back together, it still hurts a little bit because it wasn't that long ago that they were planning their future together, and they were going to get married because they were engaged and everything. So he has feelings for her, so it makes it a little harder. But he had this interesting conversation with Dorian, which Dorian was a part of this kind of, I know I keep going from one thing into another, but he's able to kind of set aside his issues with Stefan, at least for now. He's like, but the fact is like, I still got those files just in case, I ever decide that you need to be punished, which Stefan's like fine with. He's like, yeah, if it ever comes to time that you're like, hey, you want to hold me responsible for all I've done, then go right ahead. Especially in this moment of time when it's like, hey, all this has happened to Bonnie and everything. So, but going back to it, it's like, Alaric brings up something interesting. He brings up his past, obviously why he ended up here in Mystic Falls. And also brings up something interesting that obviously the group has lost a lot. Like, a lot of people are been through a lot of pain, but even with it all, that they're still here today. That they were able to, it's not the easiest thing, but they were able to find a way to live with their pain and stuff. And that in a twisted way, and I didn't even think about this until you pointed out, if it wasn't for their loss, they wouldn't be who they are right now. Their loss altogether, everything that everyone has ever lost has led them to this moment where they all came together and became this beautiful, messed up family that they are. And it's just like, dude, that's so crazy to look at it like that. I didn't even think about that, because all the bad stuff and the mistakes and, you know, all the people they've lost have led them to this, to be where they are right now, to meet the people that they've met. Like, there's a lot of connections that would not have been met if it wasn't for loss. So, and there was also a slight nod to Valerie. I brought her up. I was like, oh, I guess we're not going to see anything from her. But there was a slight nod to Valerie because she was able to put like a protection spell around the girls so that they could come to the wedding without there being any issues. Then you have Damon being the one that actually gets to marry Stefan and Caroline. And he's like, okay, the bride and the groom have decided to, you know, they were going to do their own vows. And they were like, no, we didn't. He's like, come on, wing it. It's like, ah. And they did. It was a beautiful moment of just kind of like, I remember the fact, you know, just like one being like, the fact is that you said that basically Caroline was like, the moment you said that I would find love again, I would know, because it would just hit me. Because it's like, you know, after the whole Damon and Elena situation, you know, Stefan kind of gave up on love because he was madly in love with Elena, you know, kind of, you know, because to everyone, it was almost like, there was like, I will admit it, from the beginning, I never thought there was ever going to be a Damon and Elena, but it's just opposites attract and everything, I guess, type of situation. And it's just like, in his own way, Damon does have his own redeeming qualities. Like, he is, I guess some people might look at him as the underdog brother that no one has faith in. I mean, granted, Stefan obviously has his faith in him and everything, but it's one of those situations where, like, I definitely was one of those people, never thought in a million years that the Elena and Damon situation would have grown to what it became. And, you know, I mean, and it's one thing that Stefan has always said that always stuck with me, is like, he liked the fact is that Elena and Damon were together because it made Damon a better person. Because obviously he had feelings for Elena, but the fact is that Elena being with Damon made him a better person, which arguably you could be like, well, that's just Stefan trying to ease the blow. He has to find some good with it, you know, because obviously broken heart and everything. But I mean, in the long run of things, it worked out for the best. It's like, you know, now Stefan and Caroline are together, and even Caroline's like, the fact is that just everything that's happened between them is like, Stefan said that, you know, obviously when she's ready for him, he'll be there waiting for her. And she's like, I'm ready now. It's like, it makes her feel like it was always meant to be from the very moment that they met. And that does make me wonder, like, pairings, like, was that planned from the very beginning? Did it always have the plan of like pairing certain characters together? Was it always supposed to be Damon and Elena? Was it always going to be Caroline and Stefan? I mean, like, the Enzo and Bonnie situation, that got brought up last season. It's like, they obviously hated each other. And that's why I was like, I brought it up, like, when it came time to that, I was like, wait, what? Bonnie and Enzo? Really? You hate each other? You're dating after the time skip? What? But nevertheless, it was like I said, it's just, it adds a certain beauty to the whole situation. But then things take a dire spin when basically the house has exploded, because that's what Matt's mom set in motion, because it's all supposed to be a distraction. Luckily, the girls were there to help Bonnie, because basically they were siphoning off her magic, which Enzo was like, I told you, there's magic to what you're doing. You may not realize it, but there is. And basically it's like, give the girls more of your magic. But which Bonnie's like, I don't want to do that, because it's like, because for her, she's afraid that it will make Enzo disappear. That basically this magic, that if it is, this whole magic situation is the only thing keeping them tethered together. Maybe in a way, it's the only thing keeping his world together. That kind of makes me wonder, though, like, in retrospect, like, could they have gotten rid of Cade that way by draining him of his magic? Would his psychic energy actually been considered a magic? Which Dorian kind of brought up the fact is that they want to destroy hell, they're going to have to like implode it with like full of psychic energy. I feel like the only person capable of that now, I mean, maybe the girls, but Bonnie too, because she has the power to do that. Which kind of brings up the whole conversation of like, he's like, don't worry, love, we'll meet again. I know we will, because he's like, I have faith, and that when we do, we won't ever be separated again. Which I chalk that up as, I mean, this is me guessing, but with the whole, like, her life tied with Elena's, it's probably a situation where Bonnie's going to sacrifice herself, destroy herself, so that she can technically die, and maybe she'll live in an afterlife. Maybe the new other side will be created. It's not necessarily, maybe it's not necessarily the other, well, it could be considered kind of the other side, but more of an afterlife rather than being a hell situation. She kind of creates a peaceful world that once all her friends die, as well as any other person passes along, they'll come to this world. So she can obviously stay there with Enzo forever, but at the same time, her friends can eventually join her when it's their time eventually down the road. Because it's like, to me, that's the only way we're going to see, like, eventually, Elena come back to life. Not unless certain circumstances break that. Because I didn't even think about that when we see Bonnie kind of passing out at the end when it's all said and done, which I'll kind of get to in a second. But it's like, that could lead to Elena coming back in itself too. The question is, will Elena come back when it's all said and done for everyone else's story? Or will it be a situation where it's like, something else comes up to kind of wake her up immediately in the series finale? I'm very curious. I wonder, will we actually get to see Catherine, or will Catherine only be kind of behind the scenes? I feel like, obviously, they're setting it up for, hey, Nina Dobrev's here, so it's like, obviously, we have Catherine, and then we'll also have Elena, so. I almost forgot until Damon brought up how extensive that whole doppelganger situation went. I was like, right, there was a lot more complexity to that, especially because you ended up finding, I love the twist, though. Like, obviously, I won't retrail too much, but like the whole, like, how many Stefan doppelgangers are out there, considering, Silas, too, but like I said, not retreading that. This whole situation has got me super hyped about looking back on it. Like, part of me is like, maybe I should take this time to binge on the, like, because I do know, like, all the current, well, up to season 7 are all on Netflix, so I could. Granted, in a week's time, I don't know. I could definitely manage it if I pushed myself, but I have to binge on other stuff too, so it's like, I'm kind of in a tough spot, so I was already thinking about rewatching it from the beginning later on, kind of put a little distance between me and the series, then rewatching or maybe wait till I don't know. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. But it's like, especially because they bring up stuff and I'm like, all right, I remember that to a certain degree because all the details aren't 100% there because it's been so long. I kind of bring this up about a lot of stuff. I don't watch a lot of stuff repeatedly. There are very few shows that I've watched repeatedly. Vampire Diaries isn't one of them. It's one of the few shows that, like, every season that is aired, I've watched all the way through. But I've seen them that one time they've aired. I've never, like, rewatched them or, any. So every season was like a one-time deal for me. So anytime I go back in the future will be my second time through the entire series. But nevertheless, I did like the twist. Like, obviously, I brought up way earlier that the fact is the back and forth of like, oh, this is Catherine making her way around town. It's like, no, it's not. It's Vicky, which brings up the question again, who the hell else came out of hell? Because obviously we got Kai, we got Vicky, we've got Catherine, we've got, whether she's actually here on Earth or not, I don't know. Because obviously the person that we've been seeing the entire time with the brown hair has been Vicky the entire time. So maybe Catherine's actually in hell this entire time. But nevertheless, it's like, who else is there? I've got to know. It's obviously got to be some people that we know. I'm like, this is a perfect opportunity to bring back some other characters, but like, they probably don't want to dive too deeply into that because it's like, it's the series finale and it's like, we don't want to be bringing too much up to overwhelm it. It's like, yo, you got this one last threat to deal with and this threat is connected to hell. That's why it kind of blew my mind that they already dealt with Cade like that. I was so certain he'd be like the final boss, but I talk about in the final boss like this is some kind of video game. It's a very interesting perspective to look at it. It's a perspective I feel like a lot of people would understand. Granted, if you don't play video games, you won't really understand that exactly. Usually, especially if you're playing a JRPG, like the final boss has multiple layers to it. That's just how like those type of things usually run. Especially in Kingdom Hearts, they love like layered final boss fights. But nevertheless, going off on the whole thing. But I love the fact that it is Vicky and she's ready to ring the bell because it's like, screw Mystic Falls. Catherine's going to burn it to the ground because she's going to burn everyone that she has a problem with. Like I said, the bell is ringing. So what does that mean for Bonnie? What does this mean for Caroline's girls too? So, the fact is Stefan does have the weapon to kill Catherine. The only thing is they just got to, find her. Like I said, because I was curious, because I was wondering about that too, because we saw that vampire kill that dude at the beginning of the episode, and I was like, oh, did Catherine come back as a vampire? Then I thought, I was like, right. Now that I'm sitting here, I was like, right, that makes sense, because Vicky was a vampire when she died. I was like, right. I also love the fact is that their mom kind of it's like, oh, Damon turned my daughter into a vampire, which yeah, that was his fault. He made a mistake. He shouldn't have done that. Yes, it's a big mistake. Even Matt's kind of gotten to the point he's kind of starting to slowly forgive him, obviously. But it's like, oh, my daughter could have been something. It's like, where were you? You weren't there for your daughter, so don't sit there like you're high and mighty, like it's everyone else's fault, not taking responsibility. But then obviously she drops dead. The question is, what does that mean for them? Like when they die, because they're kind of like zombies. They're halfway in this world and they're halfway out. So what does that mean for them when it's all said and done? Does that mean that because she's dead, she's back in hell, kind of going through the motions of things? Or does that mean she's dead? Like she just no longer exists type of situation? I don't know. A crazy episode, and I'm very interested to see where it all goes down. Like I said, next week is the series finale. I'm very eager to see how they decide to wrap this story up and see where everyone's story ends. Like I said, obviously I feel like it's going to be a sad but beautiful thing, especially Bonnie's story. I feel like that's what they're leading that up to, like her becoming, because I threw that up there before, like when her power acted, like when Enzo died, I was like, are they setting Bonnie up to be the new Cade? I was wondering that maybe they were setting her up to be kind of an antagonist, like in an antagonistic point. Foe again in a certain sense, but maybe it's kind of a situation where it's like, no, she'll kind of replace hell and it'll be more of a peaceful afterlife. Obviously, like I said, a place for her and her friends to kind of be gathered again, kind of a beautiful moment, like when they're all dead, you know, when they've lived their lives, when everything's said and done, that they'll be kind of reunited again, you know, vampires and human alike, you know. So very interested to see how that all plays out. And now moving on to this week's episode of Grimm. So this episode mainly dealt with a kind of eco-Vessin creature thing known as, I'm going to butcher its name, it's like the Kenoshi Mobi. Essentially, it's like legitimately the first thing that kind of came to my mind when I kind of saw it, I was like, it kind of reminds me of Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. Just the first thing that kind of popped in my mind. Maybe a cross between Groot and maybe Swamp Thing. I mean, taking certain aspects of Swamp Thing, like his motivations and kind of like how his powers work. Maybe, I don't know. At least those are things that kind of first popped up in my head. I mean, you could also say that's me being fair, you know, be pulling both from DC and Marvel like that. Nevertheless, this isn't not too comic books, so I apologize about that. Nevertheless, apparently this thing is killing people who attack/destroy the environment. Hence the dude at the beginning, which I thought was so interesting that the guy that was like, yo, I was like, yeah, he brought up the fact is that he shot at the thing, but I was like, you keep skating around the fact is that you shot your friend in the head while you're trying to kill it. But then later on when like Hank and Nick were interrogating him, he let it slip. He was like, yeah, I tried to kill it. It's like, no. You said before that you shot at it. You would say that you tried to shoot at it. And it's like, yeah, my friend got away. I mean, but he was already dead at that point, which like that thing kills people pretty brutally. First, it killed the first dude at the beginning of the episode, took those branches or whatever, those roots, and just shot through its chest. The second lady, it went through her mouth. Apparently, this thing has been doing it for years upon years, which at first I'll admit, because they brought up the fact of the question of like, oh, what's this thing like? Obviously, maybe it is technically a Vessin, so maybe it has a form where it looks human, you know, or maybe it's 100% Vogued all the time. But I was thinking maybe that lady, you know, we see the like second victim in the episode. I was starting to think maybe it was her who was the Vessin. I was thinking like, oh, like I didn't pay attention to like, oh, the EG or EK, whatever waste place that she works for, that she's dumping waste. I was looking at that, I was like, oh man, you grounded those bodies up and now you're feeding them to the earth, aren't you? And then I saw the Kenobi and I was like, oh, so you're not, oh, so you're working together. I was like, oh, you're looking at her like that. Nope, she's just a bad person. She's polluting the earth, in particular the forest. I was like, so never mind, that changes everything. But that was just kind of the first thing that came to my mind when I saw that. I did like how this whole situation had everyone, and more so than anyone, it had Monroe kind of freaked out, kind of conflicted. At first, I love the fact that he's freaked out because, like, apparently this is also connected to a tree known as, like, what was it called? The Jumboko tree. Essentially, it's a tree that feeds off of blood and people. So that's what this tree is, and it has people's faces in it. And the moment Monroe sees it, he's like, oh, crap. He's like, okay, you know there's this whole condition that basically there's a word for it where it's like basically you hallucinate from not getting enough sleep, and you start seeing faces everywhere. And you have Wu being like, yeah, but I slept like a baby last night and got plenty enough sleep, and I'm seeing faces in that tree. And then Monroe turns back around and is like, yeah, those are definitely faces in that tree. But I love the fact is that Monroe's very conflicted about the whole circumstances. It's like, oh man, I feel bad. Like, obviously this stuff we're spreading around isn't going to hurt the environment, but maybe, because they're trying to get its attention and everything. But it's like, I don't want to get its attention because I don't want to hurt it. Because it's like, honestly, we're kind of messing with its whole situation. And you have like Nick being like, well, this thing is killing people. It's like, well, yeah, but these are bad people. They're poaching and stuff like that. You can't blame it for protecting its home territory. It's doing, kind of doing a good service. It's getting rid of bad people. But it's like, yeah, but it's still murdering people. That's not how the law works. You don't get to pick and choose who lives and dies. But it's like, but for Monroe, it's like, yeah, but I mean, at the very least, it's kind of disposing of them in a very eco-friendly way, because it's not like their bodies are rotting in the ground or something. I was like, no, they're used to nourish this tree, which is, it's very beautiful in a twisted tree eating people way, especially because the way Monroe originally thought, like, kind of brought up, it's like, oh yeah, this thing protects it's like, you coming in wrecking the forest or whatever that this thing is in. It's like if someone came into your house, killed your cat, killed your dog, a whole bunch of other stuff, and then pissed on your bed. It's like, did you really have to go? I was like, okay, is anyone going to cut him off at any point during this analogy? And then it ends off with someone pissing on your bed. I was like, oh, okay, so that's where you decide to end it, Monroe. Okay, sure, do whatever you want to. I was wondering how this was all going to end, but it turns out, I mean, it kind of ends on a very sad note, because it's like, well, like, obviously Rosalie kind of got caught up in it because it took an interest in Rosalie, because when she was trying to get out there to help them, her car ended up getting hit, just the rough terrain, and she started leaking oil, and so she ended up catching his attention. So to protect her and to keep them all from getting killed, Nick had to fight it because it wasn't willing to talk. It didn't care about him being a Grimm or anything like that. It's a situation where it's like, I'm not 100%, it's not 100% clear whether it had consciousness or not. And then basically Nick ended up slashing at it, which had like this green ooze coming out of it, and then you have the Junpoko like grabbing it and pulling it into the tree, and then we also see its face as one of the many faces on the tree. And it's like, and I love it, everyone's like, yeah, Nick's like, well, we did all we can do, so maybe we should go. And everyone's like, yeah, oh yeah, sure, yeah, let's pack it up and go. And then the last thing we see at the end of that, like, we see as they're pulling away, we see the Kenoshi's face kind of moving around like it's still alive, because like they're kind of caught in a constant, at least the other faces were caught in a constant state of fear, like kind of in a state of anguish. Now, it was something, like, for one, I never bring it up, but I always forget, because I always tend to forget to, but I always love it, because the fact is you forget that Nick does have to fill in the Grimm book, because the Grimm book is not all about, like, obviously as a Grimm he has to fill in it to explain, like, oh yeah, these are my experiences, because obviously he's had a lot of experiences that a lot of other Grimms didn't, this being one of them, and so he's kind of explaining it a little bit, and then like everyone else is helping him put it in a very elegant way. It's like, no, maybe you shouldn't use that word, maybe you should use the word sacrifice. And it's just like everyone's coming together. And then Moreau brings up the fact that he's like, what if the Junbuko wasn't eating him just as sustenance? What if it was actually eating him to protect him from us? And everyone's just like, yep, we're done for today. Let's just leave it at that. Which I was like, okay, the moment Monroe brings up a point, we're all ready to just pack it up and leave now, huh? I guess mainly because his thoughts was like, let's perpetuate this a little bit more. It's like, no, this is a crazy enough day. Let's just put it to rest here. And I love the fact that him and Rosalie are snuggling in their bed, and they happen to look up their roof, and it's like, they're ceiling, and they see, like, obviously the wood, those darkish brown spots, the circle spots on the wood kind of look like a face, and they're like, you don't think it's like, nah, it can't be, it's pine, there's no way. It's like, yeah, let's just cut off the lights, yeah, all right, good night. And they're like, okay, we need to paint that ceiling as soon as possible. Yeah, let's get to that. I love that circumstances like that do stick with them. So, and with the way they set that up, it does make you almost think like there could be something up about that going forward. But I'm guessing that's one of those things where it's just kind of like, maybe so, maybe not. I mean, for now, we just leave it as it could be something, could be not. I was thinking like, oh, maybe something that goes deeper in the future, like it comes back. But then again, I found out about the whole 3-episode thing, which I'll get to that at the end of the episode. Well, I'll go ahead and bring it up now. I'll just reiterate it at the end of it. But I was wondering like whether this season was going to be super short or not. And it turns out it is. It seems like a lot of things do that. Like a lot of stuff gets cut down like super short in the final seasons. Like you take Vampire Diaries. Like normally it's like a 20-some episode season. Now that the final season, like, you know, it's currently on its second to last episode is today. Which granted I haven't watched it yet. So kind of once again showing you the order of how I record these. But that was reduced to a 16 episode thing. It's like literally half of normal seasons, because I'm pretty sure all Grimm's previous seasons have been like 20 some episodes. It's kind of like a lot of stuff done it, because even Person of Interest is normally like 20 some per season, but like the final season was only like 13. So The Mentalist did that. Just there's a long list of other stuff. So I'm kind of sad about that, because I was wondering, but I just didn't want to look into it, because I was like, because it would make it come that much faster. But now it kind of got sped up even more, because now I know it's like the end is just that much closer too. So it's like it bums me out a little bit. But I'm very interested to see where it goes, especially because obviously that was the main plot of the episode. What you also had was kind of furthering the overall main plot, and that deals with that thing, because now everyone's been brought in about the whole monster in the mirror situation, and I love it because everyone's super uncomfortable. Monroe's even suggesting, like, okay, so no one looks at a mirror by themselves. We're enacting the buddy system. Everyone's got each other's back. And there's even that moment where Nick is like, okay, I want you to stay there. I was like, he's got Adeline by his side, and it's like, okay, we're gonna shave. Okay, pulls the blanket off the mirror. Okay, do you see anything? No, he's getting the shower, like he's getting the shave gel ready and about to put it on his face and everything. She's like, well, wait a minute. What if this thing isn't afraid of Grimm's? And he pauses, because he was like, because it ran away the last time it popped up, but the moment it looked at him, see it kind of left. But it's like, at first he was wondering, it's like, she kind of brings up, like, maybe it was indifferent. Maybe it didn't run away because you were a Grimm. Maybe it just kind of saw what it wanted to see and just decided to leave. She's like, you know what? It's okay. I like you with stubble. And they just put the blanket down and just go about their days. I love it. Just how super weird about it everyone is. And also even a moment later on where you have Eve looking at that mirror, and she turns it on the other side, and the blood starts dripping off the mirror part of the mirror, and it starts falling on the table. And they're like, okay, now let's put that back up and never touch that again. Because the only ones that so far have experience with it are Eve and Nick. Because Nick even brought up the fact that he had a dream about it, but Diana was like, oh no, it wasn't a dream. And it's like, what's that about? Diana being all creepy, popping up like that out of nowhere. She's basically like, almost kind of saying almost like it was a premonition almost, that basically it's a vision of the future, that thing it's coming, like, obviously because something is coming. So that they're basically saying that basically this whole situation with whatever that thing is, whether it's vested or not, that at the very least, it's, it brings up the fact is that maybe it's connected to, obviously it's connected to Eve because it's come after her. It first appeared to her, but it also showed itself to Nick, but it came in to try to attack her. It hasn't really come to attack anyone else. So is it because she's a hexen beast? Because that was also something Nick was worried about. That's why he didn't want Adeline to be alone, because it's like, you're a hexen beast too. So maybe it particularly targets hexen beast or whatever. But it was a situation where Diana was kind of basically like, oh yeah, but the fact is that when this thing goes down, it's going to be in its world. So it brings up the whole question of like this other world, because Eve's like, yeah, we're going to have to get there. But it's the only way we can really know about this whole situation, which to me is that other world seems like the afterlife possibly. So it seems like to me the only way to get over there is to die. And maybe that's why Nick is connected to it too, because I mean, in particular, why they're connected, because they're the only two that have died and crossed over and came back. I mean, granted, I'm not sure if you call Eve's situation necessarily dying. Definitely Nick upright died. And maybe, like I said, I brought it up, like maybe this thing is some like vested god, or might be death itself. Maybe like it's like I said, because it's like something we don't really know that much about Vessens themselves, which I'm very curious to see where this all takes us, especially because you have Sean looking into it, trying to find out more about it. His friend, I think her name is Dacia, is kind of like, I don't really know 100% about what your daughter is drawing. Some of these symbols are ancient. Some of them I'm not familiar with. So it's like, maybe she's making them up. But the fact is, like, I don't know. She's like, there's something here. And it's like, you need to find out what this is all about. So I'm wondering, will Sean kind of present his issues to the rest of the group or not, or what, because he still doesn't know that this is all connected to the stick and it's in under the tunnel in Nick's loft and everything. So some slight developments, like there was only like 2 parts of this episode that were connected to that overall. I mean, granted, they kept bringing up the fact is that, like, because when Wu brought up the fact is, I was like, oh yeah, I got my beauty sleep last night. It's like, because Monroe was kind of like, oh, no one slept at all. I guess it was mainly because of that, because everyone's on edge, because I'm sure no one's really trying to look at any mirrors, ever since they subsequently found anything. I also thought that was kind of interesting. There's that little slight scene where you have Nick kind of looking off and he sees Sean who's looking back at him, but I was like, huh, oh, nothing, huh. And then obviously he answered a call from Daisha. But I thought that was just kind of interesting. Just a little slight look towards the other direction. It's like, hey, we are slightly on good terms, but we're not going to rock the boat by pretending to be something we're not. Pretend like we're buddy, like we could go back to the way we were before. So, very interesting episode. Obviously, with this week's like creature situation, but also about, like I said, the slight developments that's going forward, and just like, with each more episodes, just proving more and more how deep of a connection Dana has, like being part of all of this. Like, why is she so special? Like, what makes a Zauber Beast and a Hexen Beast being together so special? Like I said, because isn't a Zauber Beast something else and a Hexen Beast like put together anyway? Because he's like half Hexen Beast himself, isn't he? I think he is, because of being a Zauber Beast, but I don't know. I could be like remembering that wrong, because I remember that was brought up earlier in the series, but I just couldn't remember what it was exactly. I'll admit to you, I don't have all the Vessin like nailed down, just because a lot of I know some of them here and there. I don't even really remember what Rosalie is. I know like basically she's a fox, but I don't know what her species of Vessin are called. Like I only know 3. I know Blutmods, I know Zauber Beast, I know Hexen Beast. Kind of the few I know, just off the tip of my tongue or at the top of my head. Not a lot when you consider all the different types, as well as the many recurring types that Nick has come across throughout the series. So, but very interested to see things going forward, especially since we are, in fact, winding down to the end. Very interested to see how this all plays out. And now moving on to this week's episode of Sleepy Hollow. So this episode deals with the fact is that Crane and Molly are locked inside of the vault, mainly because it's triggered by the fact is that she had this imaginary friend she had when she was much younger, that basically was the person that she kind of relied on anytime things weren't necessarily going right. She kind of relied on him and talked to him. His name is Mr. Stitch. Well, Mr. Stitch seems to have come to life and attacks her teacher, but more so than anything, it seems like the real target more so is her mom, because basically it's a situation like, the way Crane kind of phrased it, it was very similar to the whole Golem situation when it came to Henry. The fact is, when there's enough emotion and, mainly enough emotion triggered behind something combined with a powerful imagination, it can bring something to life. In this particular case, it's a creature known as an Ent taking on this form, but basically it's drawn to her like powerful emotions. Now, obviously, at first it's directed at her teacher. It's more of like I guess in Molly's mind, her anger is just very displaced, and it's not like a clear cut like, oh, it's this person or that. But then eventually it becomes very more focused, and Mr. Stitch ends up attacking her mom. Basically, this all trails back because she has such a problem with her mom, because her mom says a lot of stuff that she doesn't like. The fact is, her mom is constantly telling her it's going to be all right, even though she doesn't believe her. Like, because her mom's lying to her every time. It's like, when you look at that situation, it's more understandable why Diana lies. Because, it's not even really Diana lying, it's her being hopeful, but it's also her being a mom, because she wants to be protective. She doesn't want to break down the whole hard-boiled truth to her daughter, like that, man, this situation is bleak. It's like, no, you want to be hopeful, but then again, it's a situation where you don't want to be overly optimistic. I guess it's a situation where you do want to be realistic. You want to recognize the bad stuff, but you do want to be like, oh, she could tell Molly, be like, okay, the fact is things are this way, but the fact of the matter is what makes things different is the fact is that we're together and everything, and we can handle it. But I think in some shape or forms that actually makes her resent her mom a little bit more. Because another thing too is that Mr. Stitch was there for her when her mom wasn't, like growing up, like, work came up. So, because the fact is, Molly, Diana was a single parent, so Molly kind of probably only had Mr. Stitch to kind of rely on. So he was kind of like, it kind of shows you how much of an impact he had on her. He was kind of all she had, person that she could rely on about everything. Because basically she's been bottling up all her emotions. Because at first you see the way she's been acting towards her teacher and everything. So it's like, even Diana kind of chalks it up to like, oh, obviously Molly's dealing with this whole situation and she's just lashing out because it's like, nothing seems important. It's like going to school and stuff like that. None of it is important when you have to deal with the whole witness situation and the visions that she's been having, but it's because she feels like she can't talk to her mom about everything. because it's like, I guess she feels like, if she gets angry, it's just her being a child and kind of throwing a tantrum. But she doesn't also want to open up to her mom because she, probably because it's not something she has a lot of experience with. Like I said, because her and her mom don't necessarily have that relationship. It's actually, well, I'll finish my thought first. But it's like, also because she probably feels like her mom would just lie to her, just like no matter if she shares her doubts and stuff like that, her mom would just try to share some optimistic things that even she may not 100% believe. But the point I was about to make is, it's kind of interesting because Jenny kind of brings it up. The fact is that, it's similar to Molly and Diana. Their relationship actually kind of gotten stronger because of the supernatural world. I mean, it's also taken some hits, but it's like Jenny kind of points out the fact is you should be happy. Like, obviously, like, no child, like no parent is 100% in tuned into what's going through their child's head. You actually have a physical thing being like, hey, something's on your daughter's mind. You might want to ask her what's up, kind of let her vent what's in her mind and what's bothering her so much. So that's kind of like, there was a good thing about it. I mean, aside from the fact is that it was trying to pummel, maybe outright kill Diana, not necessarily because that's what she wanted, but it was mostly, like I said, it was kind of taking those heightened instincts inside of Molly, those emotional instincts, and kind of acting upon them. But it's kind of something Jenny had brought up. The fact is that the supernatural world actually helped her fix her relationship with Abby, because her and Abby had the biggest disagreement. Obviously, her and Abby didn't get along because of the whole Abby ended up turning her back on Jenny, and Jenny kind of went from one facility to another, everyone always thinking she's crazy, always having to deal with that by herself. But eventually, the supernatural world, once Abby accepted that and became, accepted herself as a witness, her and Jenny reunited and they became stronger than ever, They found themselves back to each other. So it's a similar situation where it's like, in a twisted way, that supernatural world did bring them together. I mean, in its own weird way, the supernatural world did the same thing for Crane and his family, and sadly, it didn't have the positive results. I mean, when you actually look at, once again, Jenny's family, it's like, it didn't have positive results on that front either. I mean, if you actually think about it, I mean, I brought him up in conversation, but he's yet to actually pop up again, because I'm very curious what part he's going to play in this. It's like, we set him up last season, but is he just going to be another character that was set up and just nothing dealt with? But I feel like he has a lot to do with this because he knows a lot more about Crane. He knows a lot more about this than he would let on. But that's Papa Mills. Like, there's so much to his story that I want to find out. But even their relationship kind of got fixed because of the supernatural world, because basically Abby and Jenny decided to kind of search him out a little bit, kind of get in touch, and eventually they kind of repair things. I mean, things aren't 100% good, but now it's a situation where they know a little bit more than they know before, kind of understand why he did what he did, kind of knowing like what kind of position he was in and stuff like that. The fact is that he's connected to this world. So, but like I say, it's a sad situation because it's like, you have these, because it's not even just Diana and Molly in this situation. There's also Jake and Alex. All these people being brought in. And the fact of the matter is, as you can see, this war doesn't end well for most people, because it actually has to do a lot with the episode too, because we meet the last surviving agent who worked in the vault prior to this group. And it was a woman named Claudia. Well, they go to her place and they find the place is obviously booby trapped. But, when they go in, they find out that Claudia is dead. She's actually kind of like, skin is dried up, almost looking mummified, so no telling how long she's been dead. I doubt it was by natural causes, something or someone finally got to her. But they listened to a tape of hers, and basically it was her describing the fact is that essentially what Crane brought up at the beginning, and it's kind of like something I've constantly reiterated, like even throughout his recordings. Once you tap into that supernatural world, there's no going back, because it haunts your day, it haunts your dreams, and your when you're awake, because you look around every corner expecting to see a demon, because you face evil for so long, you start seeing it in the shadows, in the corner of your eyes. You can't never really 100% rest, or always on edge, because you never know where it's coming from. Especially in her case, she lost a very important friend of hers, Michael. It's just like, you lost and you fought so much, and kind of for what? It's because it's an ongoing battle that will never end. The great battle of good versus evil. It's an always going on battle for eternity. And it's a situation where it's like a lot of bloodshed and tears is put forth in this fight. And it's almost like, what's the point? Especially when you walk away from it. Because even when you walk away from it, you're still haunted by it. In her case, so she's like, even to the point where it's like, I'm going to obviously eventually die. But the fact of the matter is, I'm going to put up a fight till then. So it kind of puts that in perspective for Alex and Jake, because Alex is kind of like, the fact is, she's like, you see what happened to Claudia? That's going to happen to us too. Which Jake is like, no, our circumstances are different. We have each other. We're a team. And that's why we're going to make it through this, being very optimistic, because Jake is always, he the way he talks about Alex, he was like, man, that's dark even for you. I'm guessing because Alex is more the negative type, which I can get behind, because I'm, as a very pessimistic person myself, I can get behind that. The fact is, they had that little moment and they're looking at each other, it's like, and they made that joke at the beginning of the episode. She's like, yeah, the fact is, you're up here training, I'm sure Jake is like, I'm trying to train myself better because of all of our predecessors, the people who originally ran the vault and everything. They're a hero, so I'm trying to be a hero too. It's like, no, you're mainly doing that because it's like your friend was in danger and you want to be able to make sure that you can help her fully and not just be in a way. That's kind of what I feel like. I'm not necessarily saying that even now, it's not like he's in the way. He's helping out. He plays a big part. They all play a big role in his team. But I'm guessing it's a situation where it's like he just feels like he's not doing enough. So I'm sure it's mainly for Alex's sake. But even she was like, yeah, you were a hero. You saved a lot of people. You were my hero. He's like, oh, wait. So you're saying I'm your personal hero? And she's just kind of like, ugh. And then, like I said, that conversation they had near the end of the episode, I'm wondering, is there going to be something between them? It seems like there might be, but it seems like they're not really there. Crane came, and it seemed like that was kind of interrupted, but I'm wondering, is that supposed to be... It seems like that might be something... There might be something there. I might be reading too much into it. Maybe it's a situation where I see two people... It's just, I'm always pairing people together. Why? Because I just love romances, especially when it comes to TV shows. It's like, there's obviously a little spark there. I can sense it. I can feel it. Maybe it's this friendship angle, but it feels like there's more to it. Like you might want there to be more. You just don't act upon it. You're there for each other during your Tinder dates and everything. We found that out last episode. And you really obviously care about each other. You've been through a lot together. So it's like, would it be too much of a stretch to be like, oh, you'd be something more, so... But with these new developments, I am very interested to see what happens with Molly and Diana going forward. Like, will Diana be a lot more open? Obviously this is an eye-opening experience, so it's more of a situation where she has to I'm gonna be a little less everything's gonna be okay when I don't, I can't lie to you and say everything is okay when I especially don't believe it. I should only say it to you when I wholeheartedly believe it myself. So, be more open to hear your conversations about anything you're going through. She's like, it should, so it should be an obvious thing, but some people need to hear that. It's like, you can rely on me. I'm your mom. I'm here for you, That's the whole purpose of her being there, so you don't have to carry that weight all on your own. Which another part of the episode dealt with Dreyfus going to extremes to get those visions. Interestingly enough, it's like he's got himself on a bed of needles and they're poking in his back. He has Joe put a slab of concrete or whatever on him and then slam it with a sledgehammer to push him even further on him to trigger a vision. And in this vision, he sees Molly, who's happy, having a conversation with him, and they're just joking. And it's in that future he's been having visions of. And he even confronts Molly later on, be like, oh, isn't something wrong? You tell me you don't have this strange feeling like something's not quite 100% right. Not just about your family, but the world. It's just like you're not 100% happy. Just basically making an introduction, kind of showing her it's like, because we ended up finding out from Jake and Alex, because they look into, I forgot what it was. It was like some device or something that basically Dreyfus himself dedicated, because he owns the group that ended up giving them out to schools, and the one Molly in particular had a magic circle situation. So basically he triggered that inside of Molly. He wanted Molly to get access to that so that basically she'd end up summoning that thing. So it wasn't an accident. It wasn't just Molly on her own who summoned it. It was summoned on purpose because he wanted to see, what she could create and see what kind of havoc it could create, and just to kind of see what Molly was very capable of. One of my favorite moments of the episode was the fact is that she's got to crawl through that little opening to kind of deal with the situation. Because obviously Crane is like, oh, no, I can't let you do it. She's like, well, the fact of the matter is you did say we should rescue ourselves. First and foremost, you should rescue yourself when given a chance. And then he's just kind of there you go, using my own words against me. It's basically your mom is going to kill me for this, essentially. So, but it's a situation where it's a very interesting twist because we've already seen her have the vision and it's already unsettled her a little bit seeing Crane like that. But now because as we can see, it's further in the future, but at the same time, we see that it's Molly still as a little girl. So does she have some kind of form of immortality too? But it's like, because I mean, it is the ultimate situation because if Dreyfus can get her on his side, he will have divided the witnesses. The witnesses are powerful together. They're strongest together, but I'm sure they're weaker apart. So if he can get Molly to be on his side for whatever reason, in his words, he's like, oh, I can be the father figure she never had. Because as we brought up, the fact is her dad's not been around. I mean, the dad that was there ended up being a monster in disguise. It's kind of a situation where she's kind of fed up with this world already because it's like, oh, monsters are a thing. They're constantly wandering around. Where did they come from? And it seems like, I don't know if there's like a supernatural element in the world that Dreyfus is creating, but maybe he's going to offer her, oh, I can give you a world. I can give you a father who'll be there for you, a peaceful world that basically you can stand by my side, be my little princess and rule it all. Which is weird that you're going to try and take someone else's daughter and make her your own. Because like I said, I felt like out of anyone that was going to fill that role, I would assume it was going to be Crane. Because I figured that's where that whole situation between him and Diana was going, especially during that episode, with her fake dad. I was thinking that might be the direction that was going to go. But I mean, it hasn't really gone out that direction. But it seems like he's making headway that way because he's there with her soccer team and stuff. And when it's her and her friends, he's there kind of helping out and everything. So obviously he's very active in Molly's life. And it's like, and maybe that would be the deciding factor going forward, like whose side she would choose. Will she choose Crane's side or will she choose Dreyfus's side? Just like I said, it depends on what he does to kind of motivate her, which we see him shutting down his company and firing a lot of people, which Joe was kind of like, oh yeah, the second person on your team, the first one being Logan, is like already kind of going underway. And he looked back at that lady who was looking forward at them. So I'm wondering, is she supposed to be the next one or they kind of like, I want to know more about that situation. Is it like a demon situation where they're possessing these bodies or are they kind of like fusing a monster or creature's soul into them, or are they just becoming the monster / creature themselves? It's like, oh, infusing them with powers. Like, that's why like I said, I want more context on the whole Logan situation. Like, did him and Dreyfus go into it knowing, like, did he go into that situation knowing with Dreyfus like, yo, I'm gonna be a monster, or I'm gonna have these powers, or was it kind of an after effect of like, oh, meet up with Dreyfus, and Dreyfus was like, oh yeah, I can give you this power, and now he's like, oh yeah, I got it, And like I brought up earlier, we did find, like you said, it couldn't have been just natural causes that led to Diana dying. I mean, granted, she hasn't been seen in a couple years, but who's to say it was just kind of regular things that led to her being in that circumstance? Like, once again, there was that guy from there was a lot of stuff that was set up last season. Like, it's been a while, so I don't remember what it was. The guy that killed, what was his name? He was the guy that Sophie, played by Jessica Camacho, she was secretly working with him, Nevins. He had that whole situation. He stole something because apparently him and Corbin went back, and obviously there was that map thing or whatever it was. He stole something from Corbin last season and gave it to that FBI guy. I don't know whether he's FBI. He's connected to Washington. I don't know if he's necessarily CIA or whatever, but he's the one that took Crane at the end of season 3. And we've not subsequently seen him since then. Like I said, I think the actor who plays him is Michael O'Keefe. I don't know, maybe the actor is particularly busy, or maybe they made changes to the story that they were building up. They've actually, they've built upon it, but maybe they made slight alterations. Because as we know, the person that brought Crane to Washington were people that worked for Dreyfus. So it's like, did they all work for him, or are they part of something else? Because this was supposed to trail back to the organization that Washington started. Because like basically Abby's dad was basically saying like, oh, the organization had been corrupted. So maybe Dreyfus is only the beginning. Because like I said, it's a situation where like the seasons kind of tend to divide themselves up. It's like, oh, there's one thing at the beginning, but then the other part of the season deals with something else. Not always. Last season was pretty clear cut, like all about Pandora and gods. But you take something like season 2, which was divided like, there was the main bad guy, and then the second season dealt with Katrina and more in particular Henry. So I don't know, maybe it'll be similar circumstances to that, or it's like, okay, at first we're dealing with Dreyfus, but then like this group makes itself apparent that maybe there's other people like Crane and his group out there, but instead of doing good, they're kind of out for their own gain. And I don't know, it'd be kind of interesting to see. I think that'd be an interesting episode because I don't think they'd ever. Obviously, like they've crossed paths with other people who kind of connected to this world to a certain degree, but never have they gone up against another team that's very much like themselves. So it'd be kind of interesting to see like a quote unquote professional team go up against our team that we've come to know. We've kind of gotten associated with this new team on the show. It'd be kind of interesting to see like a team that's kind of considered to know veterans at it and kind of see them kind of compare each other. Like, oh, you consider yourself very good. You're supposed to be good at this, blah, 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 blah. You don't even know this. Like, I don't know. That'd be kind of interesting. Obviously, this is just me thinking outside the box, but definitely be interesting. But like I said, maybe it's a situation where the story they originally had, they reworked it so things were dropped and kind of changed. I mean, so we'll just kind of have to wait and go further to see whether that's where that really lies. So I am very curious about that whole situation. Like, how will that? Because obviously the only people we've seen so far, because we've only seen Crane, now we've seen Molly. We don't know where the rest of the team, Alex, Jenny, Jake, as well as Diana, where they stand in his future. Like I said, it boggles my mind that you have Crane being so old, but why him specifically? Not unless they do something to Crane, because obviously he is like 200 years old, but maybe they take that life force that he built up the entire time he was kind of in slumber. Maybe they stole that from him and which rapidly aged him, maybe to the point that it's slowly aging him to the point it will, time is catching up with, not slowly, but it's just all hitting him all at once and he's slowly dying type of situation. I don't know. I mean, what other reason would Dreyfus have to keep him around? I mean, maybe if Crane dies, obviously the power of the witness will pass on to someone else, and maybe he needs Crane to stay there so that Molly can stay the witness as well, or Molly isn't drawn to another witness. I mean, whatever the case may be, he needs Molly to be exactly where she is, and obviously going forward, he's going to try and push her to be more like on his side. Obviously, we're going to be on the lookout for that going forward. So, I mean, I doubt Molly told her mom anything about who she met, probably because she probably didn't think much of it. Mainly because she probably feels something there and she's, what he was saying was true. So maybe she won't be really that quick to want to give him up. So, like I said, just kind of throwing out some thoughts and stuff I just felt like kind of rambling on about. So I do apologize. So, very interested to see where we go next episode. And now moving on to the season finale of Emerald City. A very good episode with a lot of stuff that went down. So I'm just going to break things down piece by piece. Let's start off with the whole Ozma storyline, or Tip. But I mean, I guess at this point in time, she's kind of fully assumed the identity of Ozma. So might as well just refer to her as Ozma from here on out. She ends up heading to Emerald City, which unfortunately for her, the wizard isn't there. I am very curious to see what would have went down if she was given the opportunity to kill him. I mean, go ahead and skip ahead and bring up the fact that Frank is dead. Granted, he wasn't killed by her hand, so I don't know if that, I mean, it kind of messes for her a little bit, but nevertheless, she's not all keen about kind of destroying the city, because she looks at all the people and it's like, even if she is Ozma, all the people are afraid of her and everything, which she doesn't want to rule with like that. And West is kind of like, basically like, hey, you might not have a choice in this whole situation. It's like, because because there was that one guard that was in front of them that she was asking questions and West was about to kill him, but Ozma stopped him. It's like, no, we don't have to do it like this. He's unarmed. We don't have to kill him. Obviously, given the opportunity, he was about to pull out a knife, but West killed him immediately. So it's a situation where it's like she didn't want to rule by fear or just kind of overwhelming power. Like she just kind of, it's like, I mean, the fact of the matter is Tip knows nothing about Ozma knows nothing about ruling. She's just kind of like, it's a situation where, I mean, really she's in this for revenge, but maybe she sees it as an opportunity like, hey, the fact of the matter is I can make it so that Oz is a place where people never have to grow up like me. Because it's like she grew up not remembering her parents and having them, I mean, mainly because she was so young, but maybe someone also blocked the memories too. But nevertheless, it's just kind of like, well, it might be a psychological thing where she blocked it too, just because it was such a traumatic event. But she grew up kind of on her own, so that's kind of a situation. Which side note, that just kind of clicked in my head. Her and Jack haven't seen each other since they bumped into each other like a couple episodes back. When Langwidere brought up the fact, it's like, ooh, who is this person that you're talking to, Jack? Like, that was the last interaction they have, so they never had any other interaction. I mean, we never know going forward, but I'll get to that Well, when things are said and done at an episode, maybe that was something that kind of happened in between, but nevertheless. But Ozma did get her revenge to a certain extent because we have Aemon, like, presenting himself to her, like, kneeling before her. He's got the whole outfit on and everything. And he admits the reason why he did it. And he says it's because nothing more than to save his own life. So I guess, how I interpret that is basically the wizard basically came to him. The wizard came and overtook the city and basically gave him a proposition. Hey, you fight for me, you get to live. All you have to do is to solidify this partnership, this us working together and everything. You have to kill the king and queen that you once served. And so he did, because he wanted to save his own life. He even goes as far as referring to himself as like, oh yeah, it's just me being cowardly, obviously the cowardly lion. But then it was kind of, to me, it's interesting because it's like, you could look at it like the reason why, I don't know whether that was naturally a part of his get up from the very beginning, or maybe there's more of a story behind the whole reason why he has the lion head and anything. Maybe at one point in time, he's the brave warrior that slayed a lion, and that was kind of a trophy to always show his enemies in battle, oh, this is who I am. But maybe you could look at it as kind of a metaphor for the fact is that he wears a mask because he wants to hide his shame, because he was a quote-unquote coward. Instead of fighting to the bitter end, sacrificing himself for the king and queen he served, he butchered them. So maybe it's a sense of, trying to hide behind this proud and brave lion to cover up his shame and cowardice. That's how one way you could look at it. And even brings up the fact is the reason why he spared Ozma is because he looked at her and all he saw was his daughter, because they're roughly the same age. And I can only, because it's also the same reason why he helped Selphie a couple episodes back, like why he helped her and Dorothy and Lucas and them kind of get out of town was because of that. Because I'm sure he saw her and he couldn't bring himself to kill a child. So I was curious to see, because obviously, like I brought up earlier, like Ozma didn't want to rule by fear or whatever, or, didn't, basically, because it's not a situation where she doesn't want to rule like the wizard did. And I was like, okay, here's the man who killed your family. What are you going to do? And she punishes him in a very different way. And I guess it also helps her in her image too, because it shows that she's very different from the wizard, because she doesn't rule by killing people that have wronged her or done bad stuff. She finds a more merciful way. In Eamon's opinion, he definitely would have preferred to be dead, because at first he's worried it's like, oh, she's going to kill his family. And even I'm like, is she going to kill his family? What is she about to do? It turns out she wipes their memories of him. He no longer exists to them. So in a sense, he is dead to them as well, because it's like, it's not even just he's dead. It's worse because they don't know him at all. He doesn't exist to them. He's just a nobody. He's just a random person standing in front of him. And now he has to walk. He's banished from Emerald City and basically has to walk Oz alone forever, carrying on like the head of the lion to represent the kind of monster that he really is. Basically a way to metaphorically carry around his crimes with him, but it's also probably a more literal symbol so that everyone knows, oh, you are the quote-unquote cowardly lion, So that was just kind of interesting, and like I said, it also showed Ozma like how she reigns and kind of separates. And there was that moment she was looking in the crown and she saw a reflection of herself as a boy. I'm assuming that was kind of Ozma, like it was kind of reflecting her desire to be a boy again, because basically that means she could go back to being who she was. Yes, she didn't have the perfect life, but it was the only life she knew. To basically putting on this crown would represent kind of throwing that old life away and 100% accepting being Ozma. And she puts on a crown, so I'm guessing that is her way of being like, I can no longer be Tip anymore. I am Ozma, ruler of Oz from this point moving forward. Then the other side of the situation is the conversation between Dorothy and Frank. Dorothy's like, I rose the giant and everything. The fact is, I'm trying to end this war, which the wizard is like, no. The fact of the matter is you promised that you would kill Glinda, which the fact is that you're here means that you obviously didn't do it. Which then Dorothy brought up something I was very interested in too. She's like, were you actually expecting me to kill Glinda, or were you just kind of thinking you weren't going to see me at all? Which I kind of think it could be a combination of the two. I'm sure if he could have, he really would have preferred it if you both died. Because Frank, like, he's like, oh, I'm doing this for the sake of Oz. I'm going to save Oz. It's like, no, you want to save your power and reputation. Glinda is disrupting this utopia you've built, this world that you've built. It's not even a utopia for others. It's a utopia for himself. because he even brings it up later on. It's because like he's always felt inadequate. Like he has nothing back home because that was Dorothy's whole plan. That when it's all said and done, she'll take Frank back home with her. But it's like I can't go back home. I have nothing there. I'm nobody there. But here I have this recognition and everything. I have this power. I have this title. I'm the great and powerful Wizard of Oz. But it's because he doesn't. Like that's all this came down to. That's all it ever was about, was keeping that reputation, that power for himself. So. Now, Dorothy once again finds herself in a tough spot. She wants that. She's not necessarily helping the wizard. It's more so she said it best herself. She chose her own side, and that is the fact that she's here to stop the war. She doesn't want Glinda to fight because it means, sacrificing all those children, like, who are her witches, as well as, doesn't want the wizard because he used the guns, which Dorothy feels even more responsible for because she didn't think much would happen. Like the fact is that she gave him a gun. She didn't think much would come of it. But, the Kingdom of Ev, mass produced it and everything. So. And since I'm talking about those lines, I'll bring up Jack. Holy crap, did Jack go all badass? Like, he just, fueled with rage, he just ran through, sliced up some guards, and just, took them all down. I was like, holy crap. Even on the battlefield. I mean, granted, they got him back because they sliced off his metal arm and his metal leg, and they were beating him down hard to the point he was bleeding in his mouth. But, other than that, he was handling business, dude. I was wondering if he was going to be the one that actually, I was thinking when it was, all said and done, this battle goes down, and then you have, him dealing the final blow to the wizard or something, but it's like I said, didn't go down that way. Like I said, continue to unfold things as they are. The battle was pretty sick though. It's all the witches come together as these bugs. They look like they might be cicadas or maybe I don't know what kind of particular bugs they are, but it's just they coming in a swarm, almost like a tornado like that, and they're swarming everyone, and you have Dorothy freezing them like that. I was like, that's so sick. And then there's that it's almost like an optical illusion, Dorothy's standing there, she sees a glimmer or something. It was like, what is that? And she kind of starts walking, and it's almost like I don't know what you call that type of illusion. It's one thing's in the background and it's in the foreground, and as you reach a certain angle, they form an image, and that's kind of what was happening. I was like, oh, and she does it, she takes certain steps, and it forms into Glinda, and Glinda kind of comes into focus. I was like, just from special effects standpoints, and I really don't break things down like that because I'm not one of those people who nerds out about it. I'll appreciate it, but it's just not one. But just from just how awesome that looked, I was like, dude, that was sick. That was a good touch on how to do that too. But I was wondering, I was like, where are the rest of the witches? And it's they are there. They're amongst they kind of hidden themselves amongst all the bugs and everything. And then you have Selphie using her powers and crumbling one of the giants. But to kind of stop the whole situation, you have Dorothy tapping into the other giant and smashing that kind of tomb that, we've seen that West had previously taken Ozma to, as well as, we've seen time and time again. It's where they bury the witches, and that kind of broke their magic, which led to the wizard going on a killing spree and everything, which Selphie got hit. A lot of the witches did, but they did not die. In retrospect, now that looking at it, it's the only people that died were on the wizard's side. I mean, mainly because he was like, oh no, but the witches are the beasts forever. It's no. You might not have wanted to believe her because you thought she was manipulating you, but Anna was 100% sincere about the whole, beast forever not, having on the form of a human. But it's even Glinda was like, you idiot, we're not the beast forever. I thought, I was like, really? You actually believe that? I was like, you're stupid. I thought he knew this entire time, and I was so sure that his whole mentality was he'd get everyone rallied behind him by saying that the witches are the beast forever. Just out of his anger and, his betrayal by Anna betraying him like that and everything. So I just assumed. It's kind of interesting when you break it down because it's his need for power and just need to distrust everyone around him. Obviously, one person manipulates him. Now he believes everyone around him is manipulating him. It's Anna actually legitimately cared about you and you killed her anyway. She had no idea what the plan was. She thought that y'all were they were literally there as part of your high council to actually help you. And it's you killed her. Probably the only person in existence that actually ever gave a damn about him, and he killed her. So it's kind of right that he kind of be left with nothing and alone by the end of it. I mean, once again, he is dead. So which once again wasn't really expecting him to necessarily die. It was kind of making. I mean, maybe at least the way he did, and just under the circumstances, I thought it would have been a situation where either Jack or maybe even Ozma got him. I thought that Dorothy was going to bring him to Ozma and did like, oh, Ozma, I need your help to get back home. But it's like the only person that can take him home is the wizard. But like when it's all said and done, only the wizard's man actually died. But it's like I don't get why did he truly believe that the witches were the beast forever? That doesn't make sense to me. It's like, I mean, I guess in his mind, it's just like, oh, there's these two enemies in front of me. Obviously, they've got to be the same enemy, but I mean, completely wrong. Which I'll kind of get to that, the beast forever, and I'll get into that a little bit, in a little bit. But the fact is that Glinda's like, oh, you actually thought those were going to work? Only a witch can kill another witch. And then I'm sitting there, I'm thinking like, oh, so is the reason why the gun worked on East isn't because it was a gun. It worked on East because it was Dorothy's. Like, Dorothy didn't realize what she had done at the time, but what most likely happened is that she somehow enchanted the gun. Because it seems like Dorothy, like even the gauntlets probably help her channel her power a lot better, but she's probably already innately a witch, or at least has access to magic, and the gauntlets kind of drew out that power. Because obviously, like, even, when it was all said and done, you already knew from the very beginning Dorothy's in like this savior type of position. I think I even drew parallels to Once Upon a Time earlier in the season, didn't I? Might not even been that many episodes back, but nevertheless, it's like she probably already innately has some like super magic powers and stuff like that. But maybe the gauntlets help her draw it out and focus it. But nevertheless, in that particular moment, fighting for her life, maybe her powers just kind of kicked in on instinct, and the bullet ended up kind of being enchanted and killed her. Because that just made me think about it. It's like kind of the only thing that can kill a witch is another witch. So that's the only way I can assume. Because I was like, all of them got back up. Like, even though they got the bullet wounds, they all got back up unaffected. So, and there was also the interesting conversation about what to do about Oz going forward, because it's like you have West there standing beside Ozma and be like, Glinda, I'm glad, welcome. Like, it's like the fact of the matter is, because Glinda's kind of in the mentality of like, oh, I'm gonna take back what's mine, and West is like, Emerald City is not yours. It belonged to the king, and here's his daughter, so it's rightfully hers. The fact is, kind of bringing up the fact is that Glinda once served the king. But now, because that brings itself up like that, it does seem like Glinda might be in a situation where she might be aiming for more. Because at first it seemed like one thing Glinda wanted, it seemed like, obviously because Dorothy wanted 100% peace. She wanted them to come to a compromise, the wizard as well as Glinda. But for Glinda, it seems like more so than anything, she wants to wipe out anyone that kind of stands before witches. And it kind of basically kind of goes with what Wes was saying. It's like, you reaching that far, it's like, what makes you any different from the wizard? You kind of want the same thing, that your particular side win. It's true anyone else type of situation. It's like, basically with that mentality, it's like, yeah, your approach, what you're aiming for is different, but the results will be the same. That basically all you're going to do is leave Oz more divided, because she uses a term of like, let's stand side by side as reason and magic. Now, I don't know if that necessarily means science, which really quickly, I forgot to point out, I love the fact is, we didn't see them a lot throughout the season. They popped up here and there, but that was the flying monkeys. I like the fact is that when a whole bunch of them came together and formed Ozma's name in the sky, that was pretty sick. But nevertheless, I'd like to see them implement it in different ways going forward. And something that was crossing my mind, I was like, could this season finale be leading up to her becoming like the wicked witch of the West, like the whole green skin thing? Like I said, that might be something that never comes up, but I was just curious about it. I was like, oh, maybe Glinda does something to her at the end of the season. Oh, but it seems like that's not the case. So she's like, hey, let's both work together, sister. It's like, I'm clear-headed. And this is like the most clear-headed we've ever seen West throughout the entire series. It's not like she's trying to overstep. It's not like she's trying to overstep her boundaries. She's just trying to be there. She's trying to be helpful, because it's like she doesn't want to lose any more sisters. Luckily, she didn't lose any sisters during this war, because all of them are still alive and everything. So it's like, Glinda, you and I, we will act as kind of counsel to Ozma, because once again, it's not like she knows what she's doing. She's a very young lady ruling. It's not like she knows what, and it's very interesting to see what's going to happen with that going forward. But then also there is the other element, which, well, I'll kind of talk about that last. with the reveal about Jane and Karen. I really like that. It's like, okay, yes, I lied. The fact is, you've been thinking this entire time that Karen's really your mom. It's like, no, your real mother was Jane. So that's the real reason why Jane stayed. She said she stayed to protect Dorothy. I guess because in a situation, it's like as I guess the wizard did send those people to go after Karen, mainly because he thought it was out of fear because he thought Karen was going. I don't know. Like, what would make him think to go after her? Like, it's been 20 years, but why then exactly? Like, maybe Karen was trying to get back to Oz because the fact is that Karen was kind of given the responsibility of protect Dorothy. And so I'm guessing Jane stays specific behind because she's like, okay, you let Karen take my daughter and leave Oz. I'll stay here. I'll never question your position again. You'll never have to deal with me. You can banish me off to wherever you want to. Just leave my daughter and Karen alone. So I can only assume it's like that. I mean, obviously the other reasoning for it is the beast forever. Like, it seems, because when it's all said and done, obviously I'm skipping around. Like, obviously they need Dorothy to come back at the end of the episode because it's like, we need you to come back because you're the only one that can stop the beast forever. Because that's why Jane was in such a rush to get her out, because she knew the beast forever was coming. And it's like, the fact is that no matter whatever Dorothy's circumstances is, like I said, it's kind of a savior situation in my opinion, that she is the only one that can stop the beast forever. No one else. I mean, like, maybe working together with everyone else, maybe Glinda, maybe West, and as well as Ozma, that they can come together and do something about it. But for now, it's just like a situation where it's like she's the only one that can do anything. Because she was made sure that she was the one to stay behind and let Dorothy be the one to go back. Because maybe that's specifically why the Beast Forever kind of awoken. Like, we never actually got 100% a look at him, which I'll admit, that was kind of disgusting because you see him like using a stick and get something. I was like, oh, is that a coat to covering himself up? I'm like, oh, what is that? And he starts slicing them. I'm like, that's not a coat, that's skin. It's like, he's not. And he starts sliding it on like a suit. I'm like, that's sickeningly disgusting, like in a cool way. It's like, holy crap, it makes your skin crawl, but you're like, that's so cool. That's so dark and twisted, and I like it. He's just literally sliding that skin on his hand on like a glove. And then he has like that whole moment, like he's screaming out and he grows these wings in his back. And then throughout the episode, you see him flying over the different characters. You see him flying over Eamon. You see him flying over Lucas, who's still hung up, and then, flying over Emerald City. So I'm guessing specifically he's after... I mean, I'm very interested to find out, like, maybe that'd be something we find out about in the future, like, who he is, why he was sealed up there. Was he someone that the wizard sealed up? Like how was he there without anyone knowing? And why was that I forgot her name now. Was it Mahara? Was, like, so okay when she's like, don't hurt him, and he can help you get out of here. But it's like, why was she so willing to help him? Did she not know who he was? I mean, maybe it's a circumstance of whoever that person was, they were punished and they were sealed there, and then the beast forever dying, maybe it kind of spoke to them and he was like, give me your strength and I'll do whatever you want to, because this is all about getting his own revenge. I mean, maybe what we end up finding out is that actually because out of anyone, it would make sense. Maybe that's actually Dorothy's dad, because he is supposedly dead, and out of anyone, it seemed like on some level, maybe that... Because I don't know now if he was actually Jane's husband or not, because they make it seem like it was Karen's, but that was for the lie to make it seem like Karen was, Dorothy's mom. So now that that's not the case, I'm guessing their partner was the other guy that worked with them was Jane's husband or boyfriend, hence being Dorothy's dad. So it's like maybe he was there, maybe because the wizard held such contempt for him, and now he's been reborn as the Beast forever. Like, I mean, that's how I'm chalking it up. Could be completely wrong about that. So, but along those same lines, some other things is the fact is that we kind of got a little look at the whole like time difference, because I brought it up before. I was like, oh, is there a little time difference between Oz and Kansas? It seems like there is one, but it seems like, I don't know, it's weird. It seems like it might only work one way, because obviously Dorothy was in Oz for a while, but when she came back, it was almost like she was only gone for like 10 minutes. So that was kind of weird. But obviously Dorothy was gone long enough for it to be a situation where a lot of stuff is going down. So maybe time moves faster in Oz, but maybe it's not like a crazy amount of time. Like maybe a couple. I mean, granted, I don't know how long she's actually was in Oz. She was probably in Oz for like a couple days, maybe a week or two at most. I mean, maybe more than that, but it don't seem like she was in Oz definitely not that long. So, but she was apparently only gone for like 10 minutes maybe, because even when she came back, Karen was still bleeding out, but it's not like she had bled out. She was still bleeding out in the process of it, so. And then there's a whole situation with her with her aunt. She's sitting down talking to her aunt, because obviously she's not going to tell anyone about her like the whole Oz situation, because she's like, yeah, I went over to check on Karen, she got shot, and I tried to go get help, and I was sucked up by a tornado, and I woke up 10 minutes later. It's like, is that the truth? It's like, yep, that's 100% the truth. Because obviously you're not going to tell anyone. I was worried. I was like, because you don't want to go around telling people the true truth, because all you're going to do is end up getting locked up for it. But she ended up seeing that her aunt has black fingers, much like Wes does, and her grandma's like, oh yeah, it's just with walnuts and stuff like that. She's like, walnuts, right? Because as we know, there are already people in this world that served the wizard. So who's to say there aren't people who maybe there were people that the wizard put in place to keep an eye on Dorothy, make sure that she doesn't know too much or figure stuff out, because she might even be a witch herself. Because what I'm trying to I always saw West with that, but I'm not 100%, because it can't be just a witch thing. Because the fact is that, if that was the case, Glinda's fingers would be like that too. It's more like, I think that's associated with the drugs and stuff that she used to get high. So I'm guessing that whatever the case may be is showing that she has a connection to Oz. So it definitely runs deeper. I mean, at least with different stuff I've seen, like, what was it called? The Tin Men. It was like a sci-fi short version. It had Neil McDonough, Alan Cumming, and it had Zoe Deschanel in it. With that one, her uncle and aunt that were looking after her definitely were connected to Oz. So I'm assuming maybe the same thing applies in this. So, but obviously at the end we have a dog that she's like, oh, that's not Toto. Obviously it's not you. But then behind her is like Lucas pops up and he's like, yeah, I'm not here to hurt you. So it's like, once again bringing up how much time has passed. Obviously, has he gone back to being Roland again, or is he just purely Lucas now, because he's like, he's very calm, cool, and collected. I mean, obviously it's a time where it's like, we need you back in Oz. I need you to come back home for the sake of, saving everyone. So a very crazy season finale. At the time of recording this, I do not know if this is coming back for a second season. I hope on everything. I wish channels would tell you ahead of time. I really wish every channel would start off like, oh, we'll see you in 2018 or whatever the case may be. Tell me, let me know. I need to know. This is so good. I don't care what anyone else says. This show deserves a second season, because it's like, obviously like the first season of anything, a lot of it's set up, but it's like once the setup's out of the way, it's like establishing these characters you already know, already like seeing their stories established more, especially when I find out what happened with Jack, what's going on between Glinda and Lucas. Is he 100% Lucas now, or is he still caught between being Rowan and Lucas? What's up with Ozma's reign now? What's up between Glinda and Wes? And what about their mom? That situation that wasn't brought up or even close to being resolved. Then what about Dorothy's life? Is there a lot more complexity to that? Is there some stuff that she can learn from? Because she ended up finding out the Beast Forever has her mom in prison, Jane. So I can only assume that's mainly to get Dorothy to come out so that she can be dealt with. But maybe there's something else to it. Because the fact is, Jane knew that the Beast Forever was coming. So it makes you wonder, how much did she know ahead of time? Like, hence why I'm thinking like the Beast Forever is someone that they know. That was kind of the point too that Anna brought up. It has to be someone you know. So I'm thinking it has to be her hubby, or Jane's hubby, in particular, Dorothy's dad. Well, like I said, if I say hubby, but I don't know if that might have just been her boyfriend. But nevertheless, I really hope on everything this does get renewed for a second season, because it is super good. Also, the whole Languideer thing. I mean, maybe we have like a fixed Jack and a whole fixed Languideer thing. I am curious to see because I don't think anyone in Ev actually knows that she actually died per se. I think the only people that know that for sure is Jack and Jane. But it's like, if Jane was able to get to her in time, she can repair her. So, but really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.